I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Throws up with the head. Intercepted. At the 40. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25. 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And then the cannons come. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back, Bucs fans, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast, live for the midweek show. We are joined today by the immortal Stank Bastard of the Loose Cannons podcast. Stank, it's actually been, I think, 3 years now since we've had you on the show, which is kind of wild to think about.
3 years?
We had you on in 2021. And we were talking about Rob Gronkowski's hot start to the season because a lot of people at that time were concerned with him being washed. And, he played well.
Boy, were they right.
Year. But
that guy sucked. They were right, weren't they?
Yeah, right. Yeah. We are back for the midweek show. We have got a lot of topics to discuss, and I'm excited to have you on today because I feel like you've got a very level-headed take when it comes to where the Bucs are, what they need to do to get better, and really just, I think, trying to find the most accurate take you can on why the Bucs have come up short a few times this year, because there's a lot of good with this team, there's a lot of bad, but ultimately I want to come away from today and know your thoughts on where the Bucs are and where they are going to be under head coach Todd Bowles, and I mean, honestly, throughout the rest of the 2024 season, they're in the middle of a playoff push here, with 2 wins under their belt since the bye week. Welcome back to the Cannon Fire Podcast. Sorry for the long-winded intro there.
No, man, that's fine. I'm used to dealing with Samar Ali, who, never shuts up. So I don't really typically get a chance to talk. I have to interrupt in order to. So if I happen to interrupt you, it's just bad habits because that's the only way I can get in there, especially, if Latte's talking, I'm like, hey, I'm also on the show, guys. So, but yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I am the most level-headed one. You appreciate that comment as well, of the three of us sometimes. And yeah, man, I'm glad to be back on this Cannon. It's a Cannon theme. Yeah. I'm glad to be here with you, man.
Yeah, there's cannons. So I want to get your take on where the Bucs are right this very moment. You had tweeted something out, and it kind of gave me the idea to have you on and have you talk a little bit further about it. But, Bucs fans usually love to find things to complain about. There's a lot of people that I think are always looking for silver lining, and some people can't accept, the shortcomings, the defense being kind of porous the way that it has so far this year. There's certain conversations to be had on the internet every day, but the Bucs are 6-6. They are tied for first place in the NFC South with the Atlanta Falcons, who we kind of had a feeling at some point in the season were going to hit a slump. They are in the middle of that slump. They cannot stop losing games. And guys on the offense are heating up at the right time, which seems to bode well for the rest of the Buccaneers schedule. But, for them to really go on a playoff run here, which I think is what people want out of this season, there's quite a few things they have to fix. But what are your thoughts on the Bucs here so far?
To talk about what you talked about earlier, I tweeted out a couple things this week about how positive I feel. I feel encouraged that we're in this position at 6-6, tied for the division lead, going into the home stretch against what some would deem lesser opponents. But it's the NFL, so you're going to get team's best effort each week, and if you don't show up, you get your ass beat. And it's not like we've been this world beater. So what really kind of got me in this frame of mind is after the Ravens game, I thought the season was over. After losing Godwin, Mike going down, and the rash of injuries we've had since, I really had no hope after that game. That was deflating. I just didn't see a way that this offense was going to be able to be productive, especially with a extremely inconsistent defense. So to find ourselves in this position, I thought Atlanta had the opportunity to run away with it. To find ourselves here tied in really in the driver's seat at this point, is encouraging. Like, yes, there's a lot to complain about, man. This team looks like shit at times. We were lucky to come out of Carolina with the win. You know, people's points are valid. This defense should be playing better than it is. You know, and there's been some frustrating things, but I feel encouraged, man. We have an opportunity, and I didn't think we would at this point.
It's hard to not feel encouraged about a lot of things with this team. You know, over the last 2 years, especially, they've shown us resilience. They were in a very similar spot in 2023 where they had to play their asses off down the stretch. They go 5-1. They win a playoff game in dominant fashion. They played the Lions as well as they did. So a lot of people had reason to believe this team would come out hot in 2024, and they did. Like, let's not forget, you know, the first month of the season, we were on top of the world. Bucs look like one of the best teams in the NFC.
Yep.
And then you hit that roadblock in the schedule. You get defending Super Bowl champion, NFC champion back-to-back, all these primetime games, tough opponents, the Ravens on a short week. You know, there were a lot of things that were going against Tampa Bay this year, but when you look at their inconsistencies and you look at where they're falling short, it's maddening because this defense, as you had talked about, yeah, man, this year it's just inconsistent. I think that's the best way to describe it so far. They're inconsistent. There's been times where you haven't been able to lean on them to get a stop. I'd say for the most part, Liam Cohen has done an amazing job with this offense, and that's where we talk about, you know, finding things to be encouraged about. I was concerned headed into that matchup with the Panthers. Like, I wasn't really one of the people who thought we were going to win by 20 or 30 points just because the Panthers, they usually play Tampa tough in those division games anyways. But like last year, we always brought it up. Last year when the Bucs go to Charlotte for that game to clinch the NFC South, Carolina was the worst team in the NFL. Undisputedly, by that point of the season, they were the worst. And they held Tampa to 9 points. So, you know, there were concerns there about how this matchup was going to go. Liam Cohen has just consistently done such a good job, and I think he is, you know, a tier above where Dave Canales was at this point. He's got me excited. But again, looking at where this team comes up short here, Stank, we'll talk about the defense a little bit because we can gush about the offense for an hour and a half, honestly. On the defensive side of the ball, when you look at where the Bucs come up short, is it a Todd Bowles scheme thing in your opinion? Is it the players who are available? Because let's not forget, the Bucs have been ravaged by injuries. We talked about the resilience of this team. One of the things they had to overcome were injuries. They beat the Lions without their starting right tackle. They were doing a lot of things well. I think they lost Vita Vea in that game against the Lions as well. So, I mean, they've found ways to win. They have impressive wins under their belt this year, but when you look at their shortcomings, it is maddening because this is a Todd Bowles defense that should be getting better, not worse this time of the year. And they are coming around, but they still have to consistently play 4 quarters. So, like the defensive shortcomings, there's a lot of chatter about that. Where's your head at with Todd Bowles and his defense?
I like Todd Bowles. And he's smarter than the entire collective of this fan base. But there's just some things I don't understand, and I'd love to have the opportunity to bend his ear one day to figure out, you know, why he goes into such a soft style defense. You know, considering, you know, what we have out there. I mean, he can only work with the guys we have, right? We know that we've been a little bit cash strapped because of the whole Super Bowl run with Brady, and then, you know, trying to bring back Mike and signing Baker. It's not like we've had all this money to spend to build depth, and you can only draft so many guys. And at that point, you're dealing with unrestricted free agency, guys off the street, you know, or just low tier free agents in general. So depth has been a big problem. Injury bug is really hit the secondary hard, as well as the linebacking core. And we're just not getting enough production up front on the outside with our outside linebackers. So, you know, if I try to get into Todd's head and think for a second, like all those games you just listed off, the 49ers game, the Chiefs game, you know, pretty much every game this season we've been in it, even with us playing this more conservative style defense. You know, and Todd is still having to get creative to produce a pass rush because we just can't seem to get there with four consistently. And he's perfectly fine with playing off for the most part and allowing the easier passes underneath and hoping that his team stands up and plays good red zone defense. And all those things have happened for him. Plus, teams have been missing kicks. We've had a lot of fortunate things happen to allow us to stay in games. And so that probably just strengthens his philosophy that I'm just going to, try to limit our exposure, not give up the fast big plays, and it's frustrating as a fan to watch, but really it has kept us in games if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's clutch plays. Anthony Nelson,
yeah,
with that forced fumble, probably saved the season. Saved a little more than just the game. I had said at one point this week. There's a couple of moments with Todd Bowles where you definitely scratch your head. But I ask myself this question when you look at the inefficiencies on defense, and I don't want this to be an episode where we just bash on the defense because I do want to talk about the things the Bucs have done well this year. I want to hear your thoughts on Baker Mayfield, the offense, and a little more on Liam Cohen. I know I cut that short, but we'll just get all the ugly stuff out of the way first. I can't think of any one thing in particular that the defense has done well this year. When you talk about their coverage and slowing down these offenses and quarterbacks, the guys are putting up an absorbent amount of yards on them. They are moving the football consistently. I know Bryce Young, was able to make some heads-up plays, but Bryce Young looked more confident in the pocket against the Bucs than he has in a while. And yeah, they've been playing inspired football. We said that all week long about the Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young is really starting to come around, so it wasn't just a Tampa thing, but it didn't help that he was really picking apart this defense at times on Sunday afternoon. The pass rush, they haven't consistently gotten after the quarterback. Guys like Kalijah Cansey and Vita Vea have, which definitely isn't ideal. You talked about the lack of production from our edge rushers. That's going to be something that needs to be addressed just because, guys aren't showing up, man. They really aren't.
And our blitzes aren't getting home either.
Yeah, and that's...
they're being picked up, and when it's a numbers game, right? So when you're blitzing, there's always going to be an open guy, or you're dropping a guy into coverage who's not great, dropping an end, like Yaya or JTS or even sometimes our interior guys into coverage, which is always going to be a mismatch. And I think the book is out on what we do. And I think people have figured it out. They figured out how to eat against us. And there are other really banged up defenses out there. There are other less talented defenses out there that don't look like we do. I mean, you can just sit there Sunday and watch other games, and it's not easy pickings every single game. You're still seeing contested catches. You're still seeing guys making breaks and jumping routes. We don't see that. We haven't had a pick since New Orleans. We haven't even almost had a pick since New Orleans. We're just not playing aggressive. We're not playing sticky coverage. You're not seeing guys swarm to the ball. Our safeties are in prevent mode. It feels like we're playing prevent the entire game. That's what it looks like. 2-minute drill, prevent. And everything's just being let go underneath. And then we're hoping that they fall apart in the red zone, or we're willing to give up 3 points. And, this division's terrible if you just compare it to everybody else from a record standpoint. And so we're allowed to be in the hunt at 6-6, but that wouldn't fly in other divisions. So a lot of things have been fallen fortunate for Todd and his staff since he's been here. And we're, like I said, we're in the hunt. So I know you don't want to make this a complaint about the defense show, but I think that's where most people are frustrated with him. He's a defensive guy, and you expect more out of a coach and a staff that should have figured it out at this point, but he is definitely hamstrung with talent.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I think it's a fair conversation when you talk about a team in the midst of a playoff push. It's a fair point. It's a fair conversation to have when you look at the postseason and you're talking about the Bucs, where they are now and where they want to be. Now, this will kind of be the last thing, and then we'll move on to the other side of the football here. But with Todd Bowles and with the defense and their issues this year, the question that gets begged, at least in my opinion, is, the consistent issues that really really, really baffle me are the communication issues and the wimpy tackling. Again, play with who you have. Injuries have been an issue. You're talking about, a secondary. I think we made this point. They haven't fielded the same secondary lineup of starters at all this season. Right. I think there's only been one game that you've had all 5 of your starters in the secondary out there at one time. So it's been tough. But guys like Jordan Whitehead, Mike Edwards hasn't really been back long enough to make this conclusion, but guys like Jordan Whitehead who have been in this system before, guys like Antoine Winfield, who is having kind of a down year for the standard he has set for themselves, these guys are having communication issues. Like you're hearing the defensive coordinator get up on the podium as of 3 or 4 weeks ago and say, yeah, there's some communication things that we got to get ironed out. And there's guys that are finding themselves lost and just misassigning themselves because they're in the wrong place at the wrong time. And like that's on coaching. The Bucs, there was a stat. The Bucs only missed 3 tackles on defense against the Giants. And I know we're talking about the Giants with Tommy DeVito here, but they only put up 7 points. That was the most dominant the defense has looked in a month and a half. And it's because they were tackling. They didn't do a great job tackling against Carolina. Like you said, they're not swarming to the ball. And there are certain things that are an issue this year that, I'm not out there. I'm not at the facility every day. I'm not a player. I don't know how to ingest an NFL playbook. I don't know the ins and outs of a Todd Bowles scheme, but I have to imagine the guys who have seen it before would have a better idea of how to communicate things. And like that's been a repetitive issue this year. How much of that is on coaching?
I think some of it's on coaching, and it's probably a 50-50 type of deal. You still can only play with the horses you've got. You've been snake bit, and guys listen, Antoine Winfield Jr. didn't forget how to play football.
Yeah.
Levante David didn't forget how to play football. These guys are top of their game. So it's just, the Titanic out there, and they're trying to keep this thing afloat. And in doing so, they're not just able to read and react. They're out there keeping an eye and babysitting new guys, Tavier Thomas and Funderburk and like all the, different guys in different positions, all while not having a pass rush. We had Donnie Abraham on our show quite often for a while until he got the coaching job. And he always talked about, always gave credit to the defensive line he had the privilege to play with. Amazing corner. The Iceman is the shit. Go look at the stats if you're a young guy and you don't know who Donnie Abraham is. One of the best corners to ever suit up for this franchise. But, he says it all starts with pressure up front. And those defenses were able to get pressure with 4. We can't get pressure with 5 at a lot of times. And our blitzes aren't getting home. And so I think it all starts there. And then, then you can blame the inconsistency in regards to play level, skill level. The linebacker play has been dreadful outside of Levante, and injuries have hit us there too. So I think it's a combination of all those things. And Todd's just not willing to take chances and give up big plays. He just wants to keep everything in front of him and doesn't give a shit if we give up 400 yards. He just wants to keep us in the game. And thankfully, the offense has been the complete other, pendulum swing. They have been impressive. They've got it done despite missing the engine of this offense, which is Chris Godwin, especially in this particular type of offense. And I'll let you transition into talking about that a little bit.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I mean, you talk about the production on offense, even without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin in the lineup. Liam Cohen has figured out a way to get these guys averaging 400 yards of offense every week. They are still top 5 in the NFL in scoring as we speak. Baker Mayfield playing some of the best ball of his career. Was not a good game for him against Carolina. And I kind of went on a tangent and I said that with everything we've seen from Baker so far this season, I have all the confidence in the world that he's going to bounce back. I mean, it kind of started in overtime. Guy went 11 for 12 to finish that game. He was hitting guys right when he needed to. Mike Evans was getting involved in overtime. They were moving the football. He had to move the football pretty goddamn efficiently when they only had 30 seconds left in the game to march down there and tie it up. So, he was able to lock in. He was able to bounce back from really a rough first 3 quarters. He was rolling himself into sacks. He was playing into coverage. He wasn't looking comfortable in the pocket. He gets those happy feet every now and again where maybe he feels like a superhero complex. He's got to do more than he can with what he has. And sometimes he's got to reel himself back in, and he was able to do that. But what are your thoughts on Baker so far this season? 2023, after that prove-it deal, the Buccaneers make him, I think, the first $100 million contract in Tampa Bay Buccaneers history went to Sir Baker Mayfield, and then they signed Mike Evans shortly thereafter. But, your thoughts on Baker, being the guy so far for Tampa Bay. He's had a couple of rough patches. Some people argue that he is too inconsistent, but dude, he leads the NFL in touchdowns right now, and I think he's had a lot more good than bad for 2024. So I have personally every reason to believe he's going to bounce back.
He's been phenomenal. He's been better than you could ever have expected. I will continue to say this guy followed Tom Brady. Followed Tom Brady as his career was literally circling the drain. He's stepped up in every way. He's the leader of this football team. He's the face of this football team. He's dragged this football team, behind him. In my opinion, he's given this team confidence. And I wasn't a Baker guy. I still wanted Kyle to beat Baker out. Part of me was like, hey, maybe we should have kept Kyle in, during the game. But, I people get mad at me when I even bring up that guy's name. So anyways.
Perfect passer rating for Trask against the Panthers, I think.
Perfect.
Right?
He's perfect.
Yeah.
He's perfect right now. So it's hard to beat that, but Baker can try to strive to. But no, listen, man, with the hand he's been dealt, having to learn a new offense, by the way. This is a new offense. Maybe not completely new to him, but new to the team, and still has its wrinkles. And, and he's still fresh in this organization. So you can't really point the finger at that guy, man. He's put his body on the line. He's mobile enough to keep the chains moving. He is a chain mover, and that's underrated, right? It's not always the spectacular play. It's not always carving teams up. The guy moves the chains, and yeah, he looked uncomfortable from the snap. There was no rhythm to his game. There was no rhythm to the offense. We've seen that Baker before. Deer in the headlights look, a little bit frantic out there. But when the chips were down, when it was time to ball your fist up in the 5th round of a championship fight, right? And you'd be getting your ass kicked all game. He tapped out the other guy. And so that's it right there. Like if you've been a Bucs fan, that those type of moments are few and far between. We don't get that from our quarterback consistently. So I love the guy. I hope he finishes his career here. I hope he plays another 10 years. I believe that we can win championships with that guy. And I think this organization does too. So yeah, to say I'm high on Baker would be an understatement.
Yeah, he's so easy to root for. And the locker room aspect of it, his teammates who just love him. Like, they adore him, man. It's not even like they're putting up with him. It's not like there's a section of the locker room that feels like, they don't really vibe with this guy. They have to work with him in a work type atmosphere. Like, I don't know how many of those guys are hanging out with Kirk Cousins outside of the Falcons facility every single week. You know what I mean? I don't know the real connection he has with that roster. The big Kirko thing's kind of a gimmick. Like, Baker's the real fucking deal, man. He's easy to root for, and I did think it was pretty funny when he comes into that game. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I really did think the season was over when Jadeveon Clowney had, tap danced on Baker's ankle. And he had to leave the game for a little bit. Trask comes in for a drive, and then, Baker's up and back at it. We've seen that from him this season. Like you said, he's put his body on the line, so I almost expected it. But I thought it was much worse than it was, so I was ready for the season to be over. He comes back in the game, and it's probably the most aura-filled interception I've ever seen in my life. Like, it was, I could hear the gladiator music in my head when they show him running into the game, tagging out Kyle Trask, putting his helmet on. He gets into the huddle, and then he throws an interception. But the Bucs' ability with Baker as their quarterback to overcome plays like that is really something special. You know, the resilience of this team is going to be talked about time and time again, but the wins that they have are impressive. The things that they've had to overcome are certainly impressive when you consider the grand scheme of these last couple of years, the wins that they've had, the situations.
Yeah, Rhett, you don't walk into Detroit and win without swinging some dick. Like they really believe that they could win that game, and it starts with Baker, right? Yes, there are guys in that locker room with rings, and they've seen what leadership looks like. Different leader than Tom, but they understand like they're going to war, they're going to battle with this guy, and that they have a chance every single week, and it doesn't matter who they're lining up against. And I think it all comes from him, because it doesn't come from this coaching staff. And that's okay, by the way. It doesn't have to come from the coaching staff. I think you'd rather it come from the locker room than the coaching staff. Sometimes it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
Big ups to that guy, man.
The Bucs are running the football better than we have seen him.
What is that about?
I don't know what happened. It's crazy because even when Bucky was starting to heat up, he was getting more touches and the run game was looking better. I had said on our show, like, the Bucs are still a pass-first team. Because even with Dave Canales here, the Bucs were a pass-first team. Like, that run game wasn't good.
No.
Rashad White wasn't revolutionary in the run game. They weren't doing much of anything at all with Sean Tucker. They made the decision after week 4 to not use him ever again last year. And apparently this year they're going to do the same thing. But this run game adds another element to the offense. And we can talk about the dogs on the roster. We can talk about Bucky Irving. Going to get your 2 cents on him here, but really want to get your thoughts on Liam Cohen. Is he going to take a head coaching job like everyone fears? Are the Buccaneers going to make him one of the higher paid offensive coordinators in the NFL, which I think is the most likely scenario here? I think Todd Bowles is probably back for another year, but regardless of Bowles being back, you know, the Bucs have to find themselves in a position with Liam Cohen where you just do not want to lose this guy, because even on the weeks, you know, the Bucs weren't firing on all cylinders, the offense has found ways to be productive, and he really is getting the most out of a lot of these guys on the roster. Like Cade Otton, you know, he's had a couple of drops these last few weeks, but overall he's had one of the better seasons of his career, and that's Liam Cohen just scheming him open.
Love the guy, man. He's a bit of a red ass. It's nice to have somebody out there you can tell that has that attack first type of mentality. But he's had to reinvent this offense midway through the season impressively. Like I told you, after the Ravens game, I was like, this is over. Like, how the hell are we going to score points? How are we going to move the football here? And he's figured it out. You know, he's leaned on this offensive line, which I think is above average at run blocking, and maybe middle tier, maybe even below average. I'll say middle tier at pass blocking, especially without its weapons. So we've even reinvented this offense, and Bucky's been a big part of that. But all the backs have been productive. They've all eaten. We've had to exist in this underneath passing game and using the screen game. I haven't seen a downfield pass since I don't know, 10 years ago. It feels like forever. I don't even know what that looks like anymore. So we're not taking the top off of defenses. We're just methodically punching teams in the mouth. We've become a physical football team, and that's the way I think it's going to have to be for the rest of the season, unless one of these other guys steps up, and I just don't see it. You know, outside of Mike and Cade, and sporadically Sterling Shepard when he's not losing his mind out there. He's a little bit of a loose cannon. I don't know. The other guys just aren't productive, or they don't trust them, or they don't trust the pass blocking. I don't know what it is, but he's not getting through his progressions very often.
Yeah, a little disappointed in some of those, you know, kind of the wide receiver 4 through 6, I guess, room, you could say. Your Trey Palmer, really your Jalen McMillan. A lot of people had high hopes for him coming out of Washington, but even at this point in the season, there's times he just looks lost out there, and that's not what you want to see from a guy who really, I think people probably put unfair expectations on McMillan coming into this year. That was one of our talking points at the beginning of the season. but it was a fair thing to talk about the aspirations of a Jalen McMillan when you look at where you find yourself with Chris Godwin and his contract extension coming up. I don't mean to say it like this. I know it sounds shitty, but I think the injury helped the Bucs.
No, it's true.
It helped their chances at hanging on to Chris Godwin, keeping him back.
We're not happy he got injured, but what you said is true. Like, yes, we're not celebrating. Oh, we potentially get Chris on a cheaper deal, but the facts are the facts. Like,
it's the business of it. It's the way business, it is. Right? It's I mean, it's the higher ups that make the important decisions that are looking at it that way. It's not us just saying it just to say it, but. I think there are a lot of promising pieces around this Buccaneers roster, and we kind of spent the first half of the show talking about the defense. I wanted to just highlight some of the dogs here as we wrap up. Mm-hmm. We got to recognize these guys on the defensive side of the ball, and really this young core that has continued to show that, I mean, Jason Light has assembled this young core, and he's continuing to show that he can pick really, really good talent. Bucky Irving being a mid-round pick, having the rookie season he has right now, is, speaks for itself. But Kalijah Kancey, dude, Evan said on the beginning of the year, this was his bold prediction. He said that Kalijah Kancey was going to lead the team in sacks, and every single week that prediction is aging better and better, simply because the outside linebackers, your edge rushers, just aren't stepping up. But the combination of Vita Vea playing at, probably some of the consistently best football of his career, and Kalijah Kancey really coming into his own here, this kid's going to look ridiculous in 2 or 3 years. And I know that we talked about the edge rushers underperforming. Yaya Diaby has been doing really well pressuring quarterbacks this year. Yeah. He ranks, I believe he's still top 5 in pressures among pass rushers. I would have to check that. I know a couple of weeks ago he was. I don't know what it is right now. He's coming around. You'd like to see more sacks. You'd like to see this defensive line get after the quarterback more consistently, finish these plays, and not have to rely so much on the blitz. So the Bucs are going to have to make a clear effort at, maybe bringing in some edge rushers. Addressing the linebacker position in the draft is going to have to happen. Mm-hmm. We love Levante David on this show. No Levante David slander allowed, but unfortunately, he just can't turn and burn like he used to. Yeah. And when you've got other linebackers who are liabilities in coverage, you're going to feel the effects of that sometime. But Levante David, still can be a functioning piece of this defense. I just don't know for how much longer. That's a tough conversation to have, but it's the truth when you talk about the direction this team is headed. The secondary, I kind of feel like that's going to figure itself out in time. I still like the trio of Mike Edwards, Jordan Whitehead, and Antoine Winfield. I think they are more than capable. I don't know what's going on this season, but a down year for Whitehead and Winfield in particular. They will come around. They will figure that out in time. I think the Bucs have plenty of playmakers back there. Jamel Dean, Zion McCollum, his development, dude. Zion McCollum has been the best corner on the team all year. All year long, and he has been a godsend. The Bucs were relying on him.
I was a big critic of his. Yeah. I didn't see it.
I was too.
I didn't see it. I didn't see this. I would say that. To me, he's stood up. His fans were right. Those who saw him last year and Bleav they were right. I was skeptical. It's the other side, and Jamel Dean, I think he's playing his last few games for the Bucs. I don't see him coming back next year. But like you said, there's some young pieces to build around here. Tyke, who, if he can stay healthy, is just that crafty guy, man. And as he gets more comfortable in this defense, will only get better. Izzian, who, is scrappy. He's the stickiest guy out there. I think he's got some promise, and as he grows into this defense, and like you said, the safety room is pretty good. So they need some pieces there. They need some pieces. We don't know what I don't think we even know what Savasier is yet at the linebacker position, but let's assume at this point that he's a piece we can build around. And then they just need depth on that defensive line. And you'd love to get a blue chip pass rusher, right? Every team wants one. Every team wants a guy that can break the edge and be on the quarterback's ear hole in under 2.5 seconds. Not everybody gets that, and we saw flashes of that with Shaq and JPP. And it makes everybody's job easier. So it's fixable, but it's going to take people, and we don't have those people right now. So this is what we got.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think that the Bucs are right there right there. And it goes back to how maddening some of these losses are on the season, the inconsistencies on defense. It can drive you insane because in games like that game against Philly, in games like the Giants game, I know the Giants, they are what they are this year, but the fashion that they overcame not having their right tackle, they win that game on the road against the Lions. They've played some teams tough this year, as we've said. Some of those losses that we talked about against, some stiff competition, they've been right there. But that's what it feels like with this team. It feels like they are right there.
Yeah.
Want to get your thoughts on how the rest of this season is going to go. Final few minutes here. Stank, really appreciate your time, man. Great discussion today.
Man.
Like
Again,
I said,
thanks for
intimate
having me.
atmosphere. Just you and I, a little one-on-one.
Yeah.
But unfiltered Bucs talk is always appreciated. Where do you think this season is going to go? I definitely think the Bucs are going to win some games here down the stretch.
Yeah.
You're favored in pretty much every single game left on the schedule, but as lifelong Bucs fans, we know that means every week is probably a trap game in the grand scheme of how much pressure is on Tampa Bay to win these games here and continue to stack some W's. But are the Bucs going to make the postseason? Are they going to win the NFC South?
Oof. I'll say this. I am probably naturally a pessimistic Bucs fan. Even up 30-0 against the Giants, I was still uncomfortable. And that's not me just saying shit to be funny. Like, I don't know what it is. I just never feel comfortable. And so going into this last stretch with very, very, very winnable games, I think we're going to have to, close it out strong. I can't see us losing more than one game and still winning this division. I think Atlanta will be right there with us to the end, and it may come down to the last couple weeks of the season. Do we win this division? I say, yeah. I say we win this division because I don't think Atlanta has the fortitude that we have. Like we've proven, and this has just kind of been our MO here in the Todd Bowles era, that we get hot, finish out the season strong, and win this division. So I think we should be favored too, just for that fact alone. We did it last year. This is our division until somebody beats us, and there's just something wrong with that Atlanta team. Outside of facing a Todd Bowles defense, they're not good. So then they've got some tougher games on their schedule. I think they played Philadelphia this week. Is that right? I don't know.
Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Kirk Cousins reunites with the Vikings.
Yeah. So not an easy game, and Minnesota has to win that game to try to keep up with the Lions. So that's a game they want just as bad. I feel like Atlanta's just one good punch from falling to their knees and then crawling to the finish line. So it's in our hands now, like I said earlier. And, I've doubted this team all year long, and they've proven me wrong. So, yeah, why not? Why not us at this point? We're here, right where we need to be at this point in the season. You'd love to be 10-2. Everybody's like, we should be this, we should be that. Yeah, we should be a lot of things. We are tied for first place at 6-6 with our destiny pretty much in our own hands. So, yeah, why not?
Why not the Bucs? I agree. I think this team really has the best setup down the stretch here to take control of their own destiny, put themselves over the hump, and get into the postseason. Like you said, this is their division until someone beats them for it.
Yeah.
And there's enough cohesiveness here down the stretch that even with some of the things that we've talked about so far, you got enough dogs on this roster to continue winning football games. And that's really all that matters. So it's going to be competitive. It's going to be a lot of high blood pressure here down the stretch because that's what Sunday afternoon was, man. It was a couple of cardiac episodes for me, but we get through it. We persevere. We come out stronger on the other side, just like we do every single year in the Bay Area, my friend. You can
weird to say that, but yep, that's who we are.
Right now. I mean, hashtag Tampa Strong or something like that. They put it on T-shirts, man. It's it's branding. It's provocative. It gets the people going. Stank, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, my friend. I appreciate your input. Where can the people find more of you, your takes, and your content?
YouTube at Loose Cannons. I'm one of the three cannons. And on Twitter, if you like fuckery and just out of the blue type of random tweets, follow me. Sometimes I'll follow back, and if you're a good sport, maybe we can talk some shit.
There you go. I just figured out the soundboard, so I got to get all the sound effects.
Hey, nice, man. I have one that's not working for some reason. So I'm on my second Rodecaster, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. So
it's actually really easy, apparently, to record your own sound and get your own sound effects on here. I really haven't taken the time to do it. That's on me.
Yeah, I'm old, bro. This new technology is for the kids like you. I've got to figure. I'm lucky to be in front of this camera with a light on my face and a microphone that's working right now.
We appreciate you stopping by, man. Speaking of
Thanks
fancy technology, you can follow our show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And, of course, Tampa Bay Buccaneer news as it happens. You can check out my co-host, Evan, on Instagram at Bucs_daily. You can find him on Twitter at EvanNFL. And check out his written work at BucsNation.com. I know he's working on some things for you guys this week. We got some more content for you on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Cannon Fire Podcast, all week long with Tampa Bay Buccaneer news and updates. We will talk to you on Friday. We're going to have a good buddy of mine, longtime friend and Raider fan on to help us walk through this week's game. The Pirate Bowl is back in Tampa Bay. Do you remember the last time the Bucs played the Raiders in Tampa and the Raiders gave up a historic amount of penalty yards? Do you remember how many they gave up?
I don't.
Over 200. Over 200 penalty yards.
Let's see that again. I wouldn't mind. You know what? After what?
Well, they won. They won. they gave
they
up,
won. Okay,
they gave up the most penalty yards in NFL history and still won the goddamn game. So maybe let's not see that. But
well, I wouldn't mind that. And then just another Giants type performance. I don't want to endure the same level of stress. I was comfortable, fat from all the turkey and mac and cheese that I ate. That was hard on the system right there. I just need a happy Sunday. So yeah.
I understand. I think the Raiders are one of those teams that, just like the Giants, you're at the level where you should handle business. We talked about where this Bucs team is, where they want to be. Well, where they are right now should be kicking the shit out of the Raiders, and hopefully that's what we see on Sunday afternoon. Last but not least, you can find myself on Instagram and Twitter at Rhettakus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. But that's the show. Thank you once again to Stank Bastard and all of our friends over at Loose Cannons and the 813.tv. We will talk to you guys on Friday for the game preview. Yeah, maybe a few times in between. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off for my co-host, Stank Bastard. We'll see you in the next one. Thank you for listening. Until then, and as always, go Bucs.
Go Bucs.